I'm DJ Notsoever, and this is an article from 3/4 or More. I'm told by a laminated lyrics sheet that the music here was recorded between December 2006 and June 2008 in a miscellany of hideaways. By Bon Iver's accounts, there was a hunting lodge, Chris and Josie's apartment, a studio, and even a small house. As the music's mood begins to take shape, it becomes fun to pretend that the fifth named destination, Fall Creek, may in fact have been an actual incision carved into earth banks by a slow-moving water whose flow probably waited frozen beneath leaves at the time of the recording. Let me level with you. I find it hard to learn that lightly distorted guitar tones this beautiful were in fact performed and captured in spaces as pedestrian as small houses and hunting lodges. It's hard to be made privy of this casual approach because I too live in a small apartment and have met people called Chris and Josie. I prefer to pretend to myself that the recording of music is achieved in laboratories of unachievable mathematics with overhead charges so steep that I shelve my access to said complexes until I have enough money. My ego fights to never acknowledge that even if I had the money to sit in Abbey Road, that I still couldn't write opening lines as disarming as, "Well, I met you at the blood bank, we were looking at the bags." Bon Iver, a creative tour de force that at first felt like a pseudonym for vocalist-songwriter Justin Vernon, have consistently been a poignantly painful reminder for me that great troubadours need few chords and very little high-tech knobbery to woo me into believing their stories while I project my meanings onto their narrative. Blood Bank, the opening track from which this EP takes its name, has its sleepy self driven forward by the muffled heartbeat of a kick drum hiding shy behind a guitar that strums with a particular limp wrist openness. The sleepy feeling that this brings to the table is one of being perpetually frozen in a loop of that shock my body gives me automatically whenever my eyes shut somewhere they shouldn't. I don't find those moments frustrating because it is in those split seconds that we all start to dream, unaware that it's happening. Rapidly losing clarity between the reality of the light that's fighting through to our eyes and our subconscious booting itself up, we are often then awoken as chin hits chest and we're rudely told that some parts of what we saw were not true, but no hints are given as to which were which. As the verse starts, the bulk of the storytelling is continued with little more than the simplest of homely folk lineups. Each pair of lines committed to this song paints a breathtaking picture of a realistic, complicated love, but I would be lying if I claimed to have any authority on what exactly the intended tale is. Influenced by the cover image's snowy, rusted car or not, I don't mind sharing with you that my setting is either autumn or winter, with protagonists too cool to want anything more than a beater car to carry them from a free pastime to warm drinks and then back home. If you have no tales in your own history that give life to this opening track's references to boy with girl, blood bank observations, and winter drives, then you might be less inclined to applaud the indirect nature of these lyrics. Knowing that 2009 was a year that featured much in the way of fragile woodsmen who swung their axes and missed, I'll take the sepia images of this EP in a heartbeat and urge us all to plaster what we will onto lines as strong as, "You said, ain't this just like the present to be showing up like this? As the moon waned to crescent, we started to kiss." A go-to in the stable of Bon Iver heartstring tuggers is one of subtle unpredictability. A destabilizing of form, often so subtle that we don't see it slip past, but by God do we feel it. There is not a single bridging pause between sections in Blood Bank that repeats itself untampered with. Our heartbeat kick drum overruns into a drumless first chorus, as if it were a sigh let out by someone caught up in the moment. That heartbeat has its moment though, allowed to be earlier in our final chorus, and too vital a part of the story to be allowed to fade away ever again. Teetering on the edge of turning into a belted stadium-worthy mantra of catharsis, I Know You Well plays out in a trademark Bon Iver falsetto, while humbly fading away into the mix to allow a wash of broken electric guitars to surround us. We never arrive at full tilt, even though I'm sure the hut's neighbours wouldn't mind. Moving on to Beach Baby, we swap out the insistent rhythm of the opening track for a sway-inducing waltz. In theory, the title also swaps out our cold scene, warm love combo for something closer to a postcard holiday. That said, sunbeam warmth doesn't quite arrive to overpower the established tone of the opening track. The postcard moment that gave its name to this song is the last image to be revealed, and in spite of being every bit as pretty as we'd hoped, our Beach Baby scene is already sullied by a sad news first approach. A cruel trick of writing, it's absolutely no accident that Beach Baby trails off at just 2.5 minutes. If you're like me, there's an urge to ask for a third verse, but I dare say that the poignancy of this drumless story would be lost if we forced it to grow into something brash. It's tough enough to try to bear the weight of what we're shown. We don't need to know what went wrong. Rhythm returns as the third track, Babies, welcomes in the daylight with layered acoustic pianos punching clusters of super bright harmony, barely keeping in time while they wait for someone to take up their offer to float a mantra. A chant does appear with the lyrics, "Summer comes to multiply," after what I think was only seconds, but could just as easily have been days lost in the minimalist tinklings. If there is a moment on the Blood Bank EP that is better described as green than as darkening browns, it is Babies. Threatening to fall over itself, there is no attempt to straighten or tame the many bright pianos here. The childlike approach to picking a couple of notes and running with them is only embraced and pushed to the brink as numerous guitars and the odd pair of drumsticks pile on top of this tilting boat without ever letting it fall off balance. Babies does unravel after some time, and the way this motley crew of acoustic instruments disagree on an ending is as endearing as it is unavoidable. I'll champion these imperfections and chalk them up as charm. I remember where I was when I first heard Woods. Truth be told, I relied heavily on Bon Iver's track record when it came time to pre-order the Blood Bank EP. So much so that I had not heard a single second of music from it, but I felt the risk-to-reward ratio was in my favour at the time. Blood Bank, Beach Baby, and Babies have each brought so much to my life that I'm obliged to sit here now, resting myself in and out of a linguistic cul-de-sac, trying to express my admiration for all the marvels those ditties contain. It is Woods that steal it for me. Woods is the keystone that has made Blood Bank an immovable, solid 4/4 that I am unlikely to forget. Listed as the closing track of this EP, a single vocal "I'm Up in the Woods" announces the beginning of this epic. The voice is not as it should be. 3 more short lines breathe in and out of nothingness, each unique. The vocal phrases are fluttering as they tail off, radiating a tonal otherness that is as beautiful as it is baffling. The silence between each of these phrases are rapidly building a frame of reverence that demands we lean in as if we have stumbled upon a private conversation between one man and something beyond what we see. As more vocals add themselves to this 4-line poem, a contrast appears between those that twist like gentle robots and those that glide as voices naturally always have. The contrast is not in their approach, it's in their mechanics. Woods shows us how quick we are to allow ourselves to be enveloped by an instrument we each own. By poring through a drawer of studio aids, Woods plays on our longing for the human voice, grabs it, and applies it to an almost symphonic range, with singular vocal lines being snapped inhumanely low, while familiar reverbs are lovingly abused to transform single words into an organ-like wash. As density swells over a bed of repeating lyrics, The lines blur between which voice is leading the charge and which choir is answering the call. Foreground and background become redundant terms in this church of improvised close harmony. Within an EP where deeply personal lyrics paint a picture best understood by the author, the sheltering warmth of this vocal behemoth is unexpectedly the one I find most easy to imagine. Bon Iver offer us so much with so little in the shape of the Blood Bank EP. Justin Vernon has stitched timeless melodies onto the most friendly of guitar chords with little need or desire to overcrowd these intimate performances. As upsetting as it feels to know that it isn't a lack of tools that is stopping you or I from freezing people in their tracks at the next all-acoustic, beard-riddled open mic night, I do think it is uplifting to know that there are people committed to honing this elusive quality that I so desperately struggle to describe. Knowing Bon Iver's consistency over the past 13 years and the impact each recording has had on me, I can only imagine that it is draining to share so much and tiring to be whittling so endlessly. This is less a glimpse of lightning in a bottle and much more the fruits of talented folks who are happy to wait for their coffee to boil over before they return to work on capturing another perfect moment.